They say money can't solve all your problems, especially love. Today's case has been named as the Asian O.J. Simpson's case. It was a hot topic within the community back in the 90s, a case where community didn't entirely shame the suspect for what she has done, as she might have been pushed to the edge by her husband's mistress. And did the sympathy for the suspect allow her to go free after a double murder? I'm actually generally surprised that this case has not been covered by any YouTubers. There was only one documentary on it on Oxygen. I wanted to talk about how jealousy can drive someone crazy. And if someone was purposely creating jealousy between you and your partner or your family or between your friends, creating this whole drama, I mean, what would you do? What would you do if you were pushed to the edge? I think there's a lot to learn from today's case. That's why I heavily want to talk about it. Remember, if you guys like these cases and cases that you have never heard of, just by hitting the like button, subscribing, and commenting your thoughts today all help to reach the algorithm and helps me know that I can continue making these stories. So back in the 80s and 90s in Orange County, California, there was a wealthy businessman named Jim Peng. Now, Jim was Taiwanese originally, and he made his fortune back in China, mainland, and Taiwan. And he would take his family eventually to California and start businesses over there because America really was where the big money was. But he still had his main business in Asia, so he would go back from US to China and Taiwan multiple times a year. He was married to a woman named Lisa Peng, and it seems like up till the story of what happened, they've been married for about close to 20 years. They had 2 teenage daughters, and Jim made his fortunes by creating a radio communication company, and it was called Rangers Electronics Communication, which sold CB radios to police forces globally. And they said that back then in the 90s, 80s and 90s, his fortune was worth about $200 million. In today's money, that's about $450 million. So he was pretty wealthy back then. He was a multi-millionaire. He had houses, property, different businesses. So you see what kind of lifestyle he lived, especially in Orange County. Still today, that's a pretty expensive town. Lisa Peng, Jim's wife, was described to be a very determined, hardworking person. And when the couple got married, they say that Lisa actually gave up her career to become a full-time mom and to support Jim in his business. I don't know what she did prior to this, but as a woman gets married, in today's society, usually a woman still works, but she gave up her entire career and her identity of who she was, not only to become a mom, but to stand beside her man and to grow this multi-million-dollar business. She saw him go from a starting company to all the way to be a multi-million-dollar business. So she was there from the beginning. And of course, in return, Jim was able to provide his family with a luxury lifestyle. And pretty much this is all we know between their private life. I wish I knew more about it. And at the time of the story, Jim was about 49 years old and Lisa was 44. So they only had, like 5-year difference. As I said earlier, it was normal for Jim to go back to Taiwan or mainland China to do his businesses. I mean, this is kind of what businessmen do. He might not be there for you half the time, but he's working hard, making money. But this trip in 1992 would change the entire dynamic and where we start this crazy story. So sometime in 1992, Jim would go back to mainland China for his work business, and he would stay at this particular hotel. And at the hotel, he met a woman named Jennifer. Now, Jennifer was working as a PR marketer at this hotel, and apparently this is how they met. There was some kind of performance going on inside of the hotel that the hotel was hosting, and Jim was there to watch, and apparently Jennifer was standing in front of him. And because Jennifer was tall, she was blocking the views of Jim, and Jim said, "Excuse me, can you move a little bit because I can't really see?" And she turned around, and I guess this is where Jim kind of fell in love. Jennifer was said to be a tall, young, beautiful woman. Here's a picture of her, and she is beautiful. She was also only 24 at the time, and Jim was only 5'6". So if she was blocking him, she was either a little bit taller than him or the same height. I guess average height for back in the 90s for an Asian male, but still kind of maybe a little shorter for the male side. You know, having this tall, beautiful woman kind of show a little bit of interest, you know, he kind of fell right through it. So they started to talk a little bit as she turned around. I guess the conversation would have went down something like, oh, I'm sorry for blocking you. What are you here for? Oh, I'm the hotel PR. What can I do for you if you need anything? And he said, oh, wow, like I'm staying here for work, blah, blah, blah. And that's just how the love affair began. By the way, they have a 25-year age difference. So pretty much twice her age Jim was. Of course, Jim had to go back to America since his work trip ended, but they would continue to see each other a couple times as he went back and forth. Now, was it really a work trip or was it an excuse by this time? We will never know. And I guess to Jim, he just couldn't stop thinking about Jennifer. I mean, think about it. Jim is a wealthy man. As a successful man, he maybe believed that he deserved this, a young, beautiful woman that he can kind of keep. You know, at least have it on the side. Maybe as a hookup. I mean, his family won't know. Like, maybe he thought that this could have kind of started and ended quickly. But of course, Jennifer also knew and figured out that Jim was a wealthy man. I'm sure he flaunted his businesses and what he has done, that he's a multi-millionaire, and Jennifer also quickly fell in love with Jim as well. Now, I do want to skip and mention the part that Jennifer did get pregnant by Jim. I'm not sure if this happened in China or in California when he moved her. So that's kind of unclear, but everything seems to have folded maybe a year to year and a half maximum. But either ways, whoever's idea it was, Jim decided to move Jennifer to California so that he can be closer to her and meet her more often. And this was the craziest move because now she's not just a mistress, but this is someone that you want to have a double life with. Because apparently Jim decided to fund her lifestyle in California by paying for her apartment, A, and 2, by giving her a monthly allowance, and 3, even giving her a 1/3 share in the company. It was a huge allowance too. She got about $5,000 a month. Could be more with all business stuff, which is $11,000 in today's money. So this was not little like allowance here and there. This was a full life funding that he was able to do. And maybe Jennifer, of course, thinking that this was almost like her lottery ticket. Her meeting a multi-million-dollar man and her ticket to moving all the way to America, getting out of her hotel work, and being like a secret millionaire's mistress could have kind of excited her. Sounds too good to be true situation. She didn't want to let go and eventually maybe work her way up to becoming his wife. But whoever's idea started first, it doesn't matter because Jim had the power. Jim had the money. He was the one who decided to give the money to Jennifer and move him all the way next to a short distance from his family's home. So it wasn't like he was locating her to a secret location where he had to drive far. This apparently apartment that he got for her was a short distance from his family's home. Not only that, but the business that he started and decided to give 1/3 of the share to Jennifer, this new business was called J&J Electronics. And this was a business that sold some kind of parts for electronics, like a trading business. And it is rumored that the name of the business, J&J Electronics, could have been named after Jim and Jennifer, or G, her Chinese name. A little suspicious, who knows? But if this is true that he decided to do this, he must have been so infatuated by her and she got into his head as well. If I found out my husband did this, that he was giving allowance, that he moves a mistress all the way over, that he was giving parts of his company to her and naming the company after the two of them, I would be livid. I'm sorry. I'm just saying, if this situation happened to me in real life and I found out, I would raise hell. Reading the story as we get on, I mean, you'll see that Jim, it seemed like he really didn't care much. Like, he really wasn't trying to hide anything. Like, he wanted to just really have that double life and felt like he was the king, that he felt like he could do everything and have all the cakes and eat it by himself. Like, just thinking about it gets someone angry and have these emotions. Think about someone actually going through it. But this is where the story gets even darker because Jim decided to even hire Jennifer to be his assistant or a staff member at his company in California. So now, to get closer to her and see her more often, he decided to hire her. Now again, rather that was Jennifer's idea or his idea was mutual, it really doesn't matter. It's his company. He's the boss. He has the power to push the buttons to hire and fire anybody he wants. And this is where people believe that Jennifer really did not want to back down and did not want to be the side chick anymore. She did not want to be the mistress anymore. She wanted to be his main girl. She wanted to be the main new woman in his life. She saw what Jim had to offer and decided to kind of take the throne and now take the matter into her own hands. Now, in my opinion, I don't think that Lisa entirely knew about this until later on, because I think it was normal for her to have like a businessman, have a business husband that went back and forth, that was always busy building businesses. I mean, she's watched him grow for years. But Lisa started to notice some clues here and there as Jennifer moved to America. Lisa noticed that when she wasn't in her house and she came back home, she would notice female clothing inside of their closet. She would also notice female clothing inside of Jim's like travel bag and like his work bag. And she'll be like, what is this? Like, whose clothing is this? It's the females. And Jim apparently just kind of shrugged it off like, oh, it's a female acquaintance. Oh, it's a female staff member at work. Maybe they accidentally put it in there or whatever. I mean, and of course, never underestimate a woman's intuition, because Lisa started to suspect that Jim did have another woman or somebody was fooling around with him. So this meant that when Lisa and their kids weren't home, Jennifer would purposely come to their home. I don't know if Jim invited her. I don't know if Jennifer came there alone, but I'm sure first couple times Jim invited her. And she would leave pieces of clothing in their closet for Lisa to purposely find out. But just that action alone, I'm not talking about the person, I'm just talking about that action alone, is very sinister. You're trying to get purposely a negative reaction out of someone and sending them a signal or a sign saying, hey, I'm fooling around with your man. Better watch out, like I might steal him. I mean, this is a very, very heartbreaking thing for a wife to find out, and very, again, sinister for someone to, again, provoke someone to have negative emotions, jealousy and anger. So maybe purposely Jennifer wanted Lisa to find out and leave him. It was as if Jim also didn't care and also kind of wanted Lisa to maybe find out and leave herself. So after some time, of course, Lisa noticed that Jim was having an affair, and she found out that it was probably someone at the office. I mean, trust me, when you have an affair at the office, like your other staff members can smell it. And of course, Lisa being the wife, maybe she questioned other staff members, other work people, asking them, hey, was there something going on? And maybe someone tattletaled. But at the end of the day, a wife's intuition can't be played with, and she decided to go to Jim's office. That's where she met Jennifer face to face and, quote, had no trouble identifying the woman. Of course, Lisa, being a devoted wife, she was heartbroken and decided to have a conversation with Jennifer. But the conversation did not go well, because when Lisa told her, hey, leave my husband alone, Jennifer came on strong and she said, no, I'm not gonna leave Jim, and I love him. And not to mention, this was a woman that was a lot younger than her, so Lisa probably felt a little bit powerless. And as days went by, Jennifer did not back down. She decided to go back to their house when they weren't home, or maybe Jim invited her, we don't know, but left her clothing purposely there multiple times. And of course, Lisa would find this out. And Lisa got so angry that she would cut the clothes up that Jennifer left. I mean, I kind of don't blame her about cutting the clothes. If I saw that, a woman purposely entering my own home and my bedroom and leaving their clothing as a sign of a little like teasing her and making fun of her, I would also probably rip the clothes off too. There was also an incident when Lisa went to Taiwan for her own trip, and I guess she didn't tell Jim that she was coming back early or a specific date. So when she came home, she found a woman's underwear in their master bed. And later that night, she caught Jim and Jen coming to their home together, and they were surprised because they did not expect to see her there. Lisa asked Jen, what are you doing here? And apparently Jen replied, don't be so sure this will be your house for too long. So Jen was not sorry or ashamed for what she was doing. Again, seems like Jim was just doing nothing. And it was said that Lisa and Jen both had strong personalities, which might be one of the reasons why they clashed violently. I think the most hurtful thing that Lisa probably went through was the fact that when she confronted her husband, Jim, he decided to do nothing about it. Lisa demanded that he fire and break up with Jennifer, but Jim refused to do so. So he was the one in the middle, I'm sorry, but causing this war, but kind of like not doing anything about it and letting everybody else do the fighting. In an article, it says that because still being in the 90s, being an Asian couple, being pretty traditional, like divorce was not an option. Now, it also could be that because Jim was so wealthy, if they did get a divorce, Lisa might get like almost half or even more of his fortune. So maybe for Jim, like divorce was not an option. And also, of course, to an Asian woman, getting a divorce is very taboo. You are still devoted to each other. It's ride or die. You're committed to your spouse no matter what, and you're supposed to solve these problems and understand each other. I mean, a little small pickle move, but I think he was trying to like calm the situation on both sides by lying to them, telling Jennifer, I love you, but I can't really leave my wife. I will still support you and fund you. And to his wife, he was like, I will stop the affair, just give me a little bit more time. Like, I love you, let's try to work things out. And that could have been what Jim was trying to do and trying to just buy more time. But unfortunately, what Jim was doing was digging himself a grave even farther. Experts also say that especially back then, with a lot of these wealthy Chinese men who went to China for work back and forth, always had some kind of a mistress back in their home country and would come back to America to their family. So this wasn't uncommon. But for Jim, again, he decided to have a second life with this woman. So sometime during all of this, again, I don't know if the pregnancy happened in China or in America, but Jennifer would get pregnant at some point. And apparently back in the 90s, Chinese couple were not allowed to have more than one kid, especially in also an extramarital affair. Having a kid, it was also illegal. So Jennifer technically couldn't stay in China. But nevertheless, Jennifer became pregnant and Jim was not too happy about this because now you've just dug yourself into a grave that you just cannot come out of. And to Jennifer, she seemed happy about it. Jennifer said that she was going to keep the baby. Apparently in China back then, if you had an extramarital affair and had a pregnancy and you had more than one child, it meant that you had to get an abortion. There is rumors saying that maybe Jennifer really wanted to have a child because it meant that she was locking him and that if there were any fortunes that she can earn, like it goes to her child. So it meant that she was probably secure for life. We don't know exactly when Lisa, the wife, found out, but this was the ultimate betrayal for her. Not only were you living a double life, but now your husband has a baby with the mistress that's been teasing you. And I think this is what really drove Lisa mad, and that she decided that it was not enough to just confront them anymore, that she had to do something to just end this whole ordeal. We don't know this part, again, when she found out, but maybe it was Jennifer that told Lisa. That's something that I couldn't find. Maybe Jennifer called her up and said, hey, I'm pregnant. Or maybe again, Lisa just found out on her own. Maybe she went to the office and saw a pregnant belly of Jennifer. So fast forward to August 18th, 1993. It is said that Jim and Jennifer met in 1992. And by August, Jennifer's newborn child was 5 months old. So if you do the math, everything happened so quickly. So that's why I'm wondering if the pregnancy happened in China or America, or when they came to America is unclear. So on August 18th, when Jim came back from his business trip, he decided to go and check up on Jennifer and the baby. When he went to the apartment, he knocked and nobody opened the door. He thought that maybe they went for a stroll. Came back a couple hours later and still no one was answering. And the doors were always locked, but this time he decided to pivot the doorknob and it opened. When he went in, he saw something that was traumatizing, which was Jennifer's lifeless body. Of course, he called the police, and police actually found that their 5-month-old child also died. And this is when Jim found this out. So he did not discover the baby until later on. Whatever happened between this drama, at the end of the day, seeing your child and someone that you cared about lifeless could have really damaged him pretty badly. So of course, at first, Orange County police thought that Jim had to be the potential first suspect because they quickly found out that he had a whole nother life. He was married, he had kids, and this was his mistress. But he was able to prove that he went on a business trip until August 18th, and he was cleared as a suspect. The forensic evidence showed that Jennifer had to open the door to somebody. It meant that it could have been someone that she knew and she willingly opened the door for. Autopsy showed that she was stabbed 18 times while her child was suffocated with a blanket. They also found DNA of a bite mark in one of her arms. This is when police suspected that Jim's wife, Lisa, could have been involved. But when she was interrogated, she strongly denied it. She did have to give her DNA, and the DNA of the bite mark actually matched Lisa's DNA, so police already knew that she had to be the suspect, but Lisa still was denying it completely. Although at this point, Jim actually felt pretty guilty for what he has done and actually stood by the side of Lisa. Like, he told the police he doesn't think his wife did it. Police was about to arrest Lisa. This is when police talked to Jim and asked him, hey, can you talk to your wife in private? Now, apparently, they had a calm conversation in the police station and they talked in Chinese, and it said, quote, on the audio, Jim and Lisa could be heard arguing over the death, with Lisa blaming his infidelity for it all. Jim questioned Lisa, why did you murder her? Why did you stab her? Lisa stated that Jennifer slipped on the knife in self-defense. She also said that she did go over to Jennifer's house and they actually had a fight. So my guess is that something had to happen to provoke Lisa to the point where there was no returning. Maybe she found out about the baby after it was born. Maybe Jennifer called her. Whatever it was, it provoked Lisa to the point where she went over to Jennifer's house. Now, why the child though? So experts believe that Lisa could not just get rid of the other woman, but anything that reminded her of Jim's affair. And maybe anytime she saw the child or thought about it would have reminded her of the heartbreak over and over again, and she could not handle that. Police thought that this was damning evidence in a confession, and they did arrest Lisa. And surprisingly, the Asian community or people who knew about the story supported Lisa, as the media portrayed Lisa as a poor woman abandoned by her husband. And Jennifer was portrayed in the media as this gold digger, someone that wanted a rich man to live in the USA. Having a child meant that she can gain his wealth. But speaking for Jennifer, I mean, she was so young. She was only 24, 25 years old. And I'm thinking that Jim probably also manipulated Jennifer, saying, hey, I can take care of you. Like, I can be your man, like we can have this whole life together. And Jennifer probably thought, okay, like she fell into that. And she was probably promised this whole life and whole luxurious life of being taken care of, new life in America. So after the court hearings, the first case resulted in a hung jury. So I believe a hung jury is when you do not have an unanimous vote. So some people said she's innocent, some people said she's guilty. In murder cases, it has to be a unanimous vote, or at least a majority vote that she's guilty. And apparently Jim actually decided to not testify against his wife. I guess out of guilt, he just couldn't do it. He was in a weird middle position like he always was. He couldn't stand up for his mistress that was murdered, and at the same time couldn't testify against the murderer, which was his own wife. And guess what? Jim did not only not testify during court, but during the whole court case, he was in Taiwan and never came back to the US once. And Lisa's defense team actually blamed Jim, saying that he was the murderer and that the murder could have happened on August 18th when he came back. And I think everybody knew that this was untrue, that it had to be Lisa. And during the second trial, the jury found Lisa guilty and sentenced her to life. She did appeal, and in October 1999, her appeal went through because she was actually not informed of her constitutional rights when she was arrested, and also that she was tricked into talking to her husband, and it was like a tricked confession. So all of these actually allowed Lisa to get another trial. Now, in an article published back then, it states that people do think that sympathy did get to the jurors. They did see that Lisa was really pushed to her limits, and all this heartache drove her to unfortunately make her crazy. And in this case, the prosecution had to offer Lisa a plea bargain. And her plea deal was that she would plead guilty to the 2 charges of voluntary manslaughter and serve 11 years, then be deported back to her country and never be able to return to the USA. I'm not sure if Lisa premeditated this murder or it kind of happened when she went to go confront Jennifer and she got so angry that this happened. We really will never know. So I believe she was credited for the prison time that she was in until the last and final trials. So minus that, after she served her terms, she was deported back to her country. And today in 2023, she should be in about 70s. And there's no whereabouts, there's no update on what happened to Lisa after that. Jim says, I caused everything. I have nowhere to go in Taiwan, US, or China, because his story blew up in the Asian community, even back in his home country. For Jim, of course, people showed no sympathy. They knew that Jim was the one who caused all of this, and that he was a traitor and a fool to bring Mistress all the way and conducted this affair in such an open manner that he did not man up to stop this at any point. An attorney said, quote, you're forced to take sides. It's not really a legal issue, it's a moral issue. We do not really spend a lot of time talking about who is the murderer. We're talking about who's at fault. The husband, the wife, or the mistress. Through a research, I also found out that in 1997, Jim and his company was sued by the US court for illegally importing radio equipment. Jennifer's parents also sued Jim for $2 million, quote, claiming he should have known a violent confrontations would arise between the two and failed to provide Jen and the baby adequate security. And of course, Jennifer's parents were devastated at the results of the plea bargain and having a hung jury. They believed that Lisa was the evil woman that could not control her angers and have murdered not only their daughter, but the innocent child. We don't know what happened to this lawsuit, but do you think that Jim knew? Do you think that Jim knew that Lisa was going to have this violent confrontation with Jennifer? Should he have known? Did he not care? There are some people who might argue, hey, Jim is a wealthy man. He built all this up. Like, he should allow to live his life, even having affairs, because, you know, I mean, they say that men, especially back in the days as kings, they had multiple concubines, multiple mistresses. But I say, you know, we live in such a different time. There's a reason why murder, rape, affairs, even actually until recently in Asia, countries like Korea, extramarital affairs was illegal. You can actually sue someone for it and go to jail for it. Yes, it was overturned and that law is no longer there in South Korea, but it is still in place in many other countries. And there's many things that we as humans want to do in a way that's kind of like the primitiveness of a human being. So using that primitive thing as an excuse in 2023, I don't know if that sounds kind of fair. Unfortunately, we're not like insects or mammals like lions and elephants, chickens, where, they don't have these emotions. They don't have jealousy if the male lion goes and makes different babies with different, female lions. But there's a reason why humans do. There's a reason why we have these emotions and why we do get angry. And figure out, well, what does it mean to betray someone? What does it mean to hurt someone? Would it have been better for Jim to have opened up and had a conversation with Lisa? Would she not have understood no matter what? Now, at the end of the day, I still think it is not right what Lisa did at all. And I personally don't know if I would use the word jealousy when it came to Lisa. I think she was more provoked. Jim wasn't budgeting. Jennifer wasn't budgeting. I mean, what did Lisa have an option to do other than try to resolve this in her own manner, in her own ways? Again, definitely do not agree or condone anything that Lisa did. But I do think this is the part where a lot of people felt sympathy for Lisa. And at the end of the day, I wish Jennifer was here to tell her side of the story, because she's not here to tell her side of the story at the end of the day. My heart does go out to the child that innocently died and was brought to this world. And I think there's also a lot to unpack in this story, because maybe you that are watching went through a cheating spouse or a boyfriend or girlfriend that drove you crazy. You don't know what they're doing when they're not next to you, and you just start to stalk them because you can't trust them. And once that trust is broken, I don't know it'll be able to be fixed. Let me know what you guys have thought about today's story in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and see you guys in my next video.